Therefore, in 9 provinces out of 10, the campaign focused on free trade. In 1 province, it focused on a constitutional matter that was really of no importance at all, given the fact that free trade largely eroded any rights that any province may have. So much for the Bloc Québécois.
You're listening to Ken Fernandez from Phase 2 of the International Citizens Inquiry into 9/11 held in Toronto. 9/11 and Canada, a case study in Takeover. This is Guns and Butter.
We also saw, however, a plethora of these think tanks and movements that sprang up apparently from nowhere. The National Citizens Coalition. The media tells us, we're interviewing so-and-so from the National Citizens Coalition. What they don't tell us is that it is neither national nor a citizens coalition. They don't tell us that the big banks are among the biggest financiers for that so-called National Citizens Coalition. We were treated to any number of studies by the Fraser Institute. Who pays for these studies? Does the media just get these studies free of charge because the Fraser Institute feels like bestowing largesse upon the media? Does the government of Canada get them free? Who pays for them? Who is the Fraser Institute? What's behind it? The media never tells us these things. And so, with that backdrop, we have the government's reaction to 9/11. We have an enactment of laws appearing to be US-inspired. Bill C-35, Bill C-36, now Bill C-7, which provides, among other things, that the government that a number of cabinet ministers can declare martial law sectorally without having to go to Parliament, that they can order the detention without trial, without having to go before a judge and obtain warrants and even present probable cause. And we see it in also the fact that Canada participated in the invasion of Afghanistan. No sooner had the dust settled in New York than the government decided to send our troops to Afghanistan. And there was bombing by way of cluster bombs, which are totally illegal in international law. It's not clear whether our government engaged in that. But their use was widely known under the umbrella of NATO. Certainly depleted uranium is being used and has been used in Afghanistan. Chemical weaponry has been used. And you know what? There were reports from the British press about outbreaks of Ebola, which have never been known to occur in Afghanistan. Possibly biological warfare, but that possibility was never raised in the media here. So we see in Afghanistan a compliance with US interests and demands. In Iraq, we saw the same thing, notwithstanding Prime Minister Chrétien's grandiloquence that we were not going to participate in Iraq. Well, you know what? We were there. We still are there, though not on the ground. We're helping to direct the bombs at hospitals. We send ships that serve as communication centers and nerve centers. We allowed American planes to fuel in Newfoundland and PEI. Yes, it is a disgrace because he lied to us. He told us, Canada will not participate in the invasion of Iraq. And those hypocrites on the other side, they know that we are supporting international law. But that wasn't true. It was a total fabrication. Canadian companies are active in Colombia and are benefiting from various forms of aid that are linked intimately to the US murderous war on that country that is going on right now on the people of that country. We are occupying Haiti at the behest of the United States under false pretenses that have never been substantiated. The same is true of Yugoslavia. We used cluster bombs. We used depleted uranium. We used bacteriological implements of war, all of which are illegal. Canadian forces did that. It violates the Geneva Conventions and it violates the Canadian Criminal Code. But the government of Canada saw fit to do that. And they also saw fit to use this discourse that, somehow we're at war with Islam. But we were not told that this Islam with which we're supposed to be at war was used conveniently in Bosnia to set the stage for the total Balkanization of the Balkan country. To the point where the Bosnian finance minister cannot, by virtue of the Dayton Accords, be a Bosnian citizen. Nor can the director of Bosnia's national bank be a Bosnian citizen. He must be appointed by the NATO commanders. We have a government that has recently, at least in Afghanistan and as far as I know in Iraq, placed our troops under US command. How far does it go? To what degree is that placing of under US command go? Because we note that the School of the Americas, which was known to teach torture, has been renamed Western Hemispheric Institute for Security Cooperation. And we hear the government of Canada state, it is very important that we in the West collaborate and cooperate for national and international security. Paul Martin has told us this. How far does that security cooperation go? Will Canadian forces be trained at Western Hemispheric Institute of Security Cooperation? Will Canadians start to disappear? Some have. Will they be tortured? These are serious questions that we have to ask. And regrettably, the media has not asked. There has been much talk of the possibility of either a bioterror attack on this country or a small-scale nuclear attack on this country. And we hear of this time and again. I would like to make one last observation, and that is, this bioterror attack must by definition be prepared for by our government, insofar as there was a slight mention made pursuant to the releasing of the Martin budget that Martin has earmarked some $250 million for a massive forcible vaccination campaign that would be foisted on all residents of Canada in the event of a bioterror attack. The report aired by CBC TV, I should say announced by, because it was announced almost as an aside, stated further that one official per province has been designated to carry out this program. Now, if we hold that 911 was itself orchestrated by the highest echelons of a certain government, and we hear that Tommy Franks, in his interview with Cigar Aficionado, said if there's any other attack along the lines of 911, there will be martial law. And we are aware of the fact that the legal instruments by which martial law can be brought into effect need not go before Parliament or indeed the public. Then I would submit to you that we have to ask very, very serious questions of this government. Clearly then, if there is to be a terror attack, a small-scale nuclear one, then where did it emanate from it should be uppermost in our minds. On that note, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation this afternoon. I try to be an optimist most of the time. You're making it difficult for me. I would like to ask you a question perhaps about the future. How do you see Canada going into the future, maintaining an independent foreign policy and having an effect for what we might define as the good as we progress?
Canada's independent foreign policy is largely mythical, regrettably, at this stage, because a country that has no control over its own economy can barely have any control over its foreign policy. Foreign policy is an extension of internal policy. And if the internal policy of a country is geared towards satiating another country's greed, if such a thing is possible, then it becomes impossible to have a foreign policy. We see that in Iraq, we see it in Afghanistan, we see it in Haiti, we saw it in Yugoslavia, we saw it even with the invasion of Panama. Totally illegal acts. Where was the condemnation of the attempted coup d'etat in Venezuela by Canada? We didn't see it. Many opposition parties, Canadian Action Party took umbrage, NDP to my knowledge, Green Party, human rights groups, they all said that. They expressed the point of view that I think is held by the Canadian public, but the government of Canada saw fit to do otherwise.
If I might have a very quick second question. The purpose of this inquiry is to ask what is the truth about the events of 9/11? Who knew what, when, why, where, how?